Welcome to Make the Grade with the Success Doctor, Stephen Green, where you'll discover actionable strategies to help your student to reach their academic goals, to excel at standardized testing, and to plan for the college admissions process painlessly. And now, here's your host, Dr. Stephen Green.
Hey everyone, here we go, theme music's kicking in. Steve Green, Make the Grade Education Live Thursday. Who's excited? Oh yeah, the studio audience is pumped as always. It's Thursday night, yeah, you know what that means. We are going to talk education, and I got a really interesting guest today. I'm just jumping right into it for two reasons. One, because there's a lot to cover, and also we got to cover it quickly. Because John's got an interview on a national radio. So I don't know, you do something really big later. Anyway, here's the bottom line. Let me introduce Jonathan Brush. Jonathan, say hello.
Hello, everybody. It's a pleasure to be here.
I am really glad that you can make it. John kind of stepped up and did this a little bit on short notice. So, but he's looking good. He's groomed. He's looking solid. So listen, let me tell you real quick about him. I'm going to get right into this and what he does. So he's worked in higher education more than 20 years, almost as much as me. Between the two of us, we're 90 years.
Wow, that's pretty good. Yeah.
He worked over a decade in traditional higher education as a director of admissions for a private liberal arts college, and for over a decade in a non-traditional higher education as the founder and director of a student life experience, a program to accelerate distance learning company. Currently, and this is where it gets interesting, he's the president and CEO of a company called Unbound. And they're an education company that specializes in project-based education. You can learn more. Look down here, beunbound.us. So, Jonathan, welcome. I'm just going to intro it this way, and I want you to kind of tell your story briefly. But
sure.
What Jonathan brings to the table, which I find is interesting, is, look, college is kind of the path, right? People kind of go to high school to figure, hey, I'm going to go to college, I'm going to learn, I'm going to get a career. Jonathan's got a cool sort of alternative path. I'm gonna maybe I don't want to put words in your mouth, but why don't you describe what you do, who you serve, why it's growing at the rate that it is, and we'll just take it from there.
Yeah, well, just a really quick kind of background piece to that is that I think for a long time, college has been what everybody thinks is their ticket to the middle class or ticket to a better life, and for a large portion of time, that was actually true. But a lot of things have happened, and there's complicated reasons for all that. But we're to the point now that to get a college degree means to go into typically a serious amount of debt. And it also, we live in a world that's changed pretty dramatically from, say, 30, 40 years ago, or even 20 years ago, in terms of how education works. And we live in a time where things get disrupted pretty quickly. And so what we do at Unbound, and what I've had a privilege of doing, I started in traditional higher education, and then moved into what was at the time considered online education. And now maybe a further turn where we say, yeah, the degree is still important. There's some different ways to get a degree, but there's something else that's important here. And that is you need the ability to learn quickly. You need the ability to be able to figure things out quickly. You need the ability to have some experience to kind of know how things work, because things move fast. And sometimes the people you work for don't even know how to kind of pivot quickly to new circumstances. And so that's a different kind of education. And it's one that's not always taught in the college, traditional college setting. And so some things we've been able to do recently that's been pretty cool is to kind of help people do kind of that kind of education. Yes, get a bachelor's degree, but get it in a way that minimizes their costs, maximizes their flexibility, and gives them as much real life experience as possible.
And Unbound was born.
And that was, Unbound started because I'm not the founder of Unbound. I took over the company in July, but it started because a guy had a mission. He needed to do some stuff, and he couldn't take 4 years and a bunch of debt to do it. And so he said, there's got to be a better way to earn a degree. And so this was back in 2003. Online education was really just getting started. And he said, hey, there's a different way to do this. So he did some online classes and took some credit by exam and worked with some accrediting groups, and then ultimately ended up graduating from a fully accredited college. And people said, how'd you do that? And so he started teaching people how to do it. And as we've gone on, yes, we do online classes and we still do those things, but we also noticed that, when you have that flexibility that online allows you to have, And by the way, I don't think online is the same as on site. There's differences. They do things differently, and some things they do better and some things they don't. And so that's important to note.
Well, yes.
But online classes give a lot of flexibility. And we said, hey, if we maximize this flexibility and we help people to really use it by getting experience and doing some hands-on stuff and doing some real things, that's a powerful combination between the academics and then the academics being put to work kind of immediately. Again, it's a different kind of education. If you're going to be a medical doctor, and there's a chance that you might operate on me someday, I want you in a classroom. I want you in a traditional setting. But if you're going to go into business and do a lot of marketing, this might be a better way to do it, just because you can use the flexibility to get some immediate hands-on experience with that while you're learning some of the deeper business academic stuff.
Can you give a specific example of maybe a track that one of your students has followed that maybe they wouldn't have the same flexibility in, let's say, a traditional quote unquote 4-year college, or even a 2-year, maybe even an associate's?
Yeah, absolutely. So one of the folks that now works for Unbound used Unbound to get his degree. He was initially kind of interested in law school, and he thought, well, if I'm going to have to do law school, I'm going to need some extra resources. So I'm going to get the bachelor's degree done as quickly as possible so I can save my money for law school. But he was also a filmmaker. And so while he was doing his degree, he wound up getting a lot of experience making film and working on film projects. He was able to volunteer for a bunch of different things. Well, that film experience made him really desirable to companies who wanted him to shoot video in a time when video was just exploding across all these different platforms. So that allowed him to pick up some jobs working for those companies, which then immediately turned into some marketing experience. By the time he graduated, he had significant marketing experience, significant business experience, and significant film experience. And he was able to sort of combine those things and move really quickly into some executive positions, first with some startups and then with some larger companies. Because by the time he got his degree, he already had over 4 years of, in the trenches experience doing online marketing and doing film in a way that people that are graduating from college still don't even know how to use those technologies. And so that's a great example, especially in the world today with marketing, digital marketing being so big. Yeah. Most colleges, even if they're trying really hard, are a little bit behind the curve because things move so fast. And typically the best way to get experience in those fields right now is to actually do it. And something like Unbound or online learning gives you the flexibility to do that while you're learning at the same time.
Now, we've talked before, and I know there is a kind of a hybrid situation where you do have to affiliate with an accredited school to eventually get your sheepskin, I don't know if anybody even calls it that anymore. They called it in my day.
I understand.
Listen, and listen. We're not throwing colleges under the bus here.
No,
I think we want to be clear about that, right? Or you're not, right? They have a place.
Absolutely
certainly. Not. This is I'm gonna, for lack of a better term, call it kind of an alternate path. That may be great for people with certain goals, certain mindset, certain financial limitations, perhaps, or just certain way they want to go through things. So this is very experiential. Can it work with any major? I guess pre-med maybe not, but it is generally speaking. I mean, you mentioned marketing as kind of or people sales, but are there like music, something like that, something that's very something that somebody has to develop themselves. Where do you think? All right, let me ask this. I'm going to make sure I ask this properly.
Yeah.
In your opinion, because obviously we're living in a very different world today than we were a year ago in terms of the COVID experience, right? Has that accelerated interest in things like what you're doing, or has it inhibited it? What's your observation?
Yeah, so you bring up a bunch of really important points. So let me see if I can unpack this a little bit here.
That's my job here.
Well, you're doing a good job.
I bring up important points.
So, well done.
I don't answer them, but I bring them up.
Just throw them out there. Let somebody grab them.
I just think about them. Anyway, go ahead, John. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
No, so first of all, your point about, we're not saying that this is the, it is an alternative to higher education. It's not a replacement for higher education, right? Mm-hmm. So what I try to make the point with people is that, look, there's a place for higher education, and it occupies that place, and it does it better than anybody else, and has been doing it for centuries, right? Mm-hmm. And so you ask if there's some degrees that doesn't work. A surprising amount of degrees do work this way, but they do work differently. And that's important to understand, right? So if you are somebody who's very academics focused and you want to go deep and you want to do something that's going to have the need for that deep kind of rigorous academic training, This option that I do, Unbound, it's not a good option for that.
Okay.
You can't replace learning from an expert, from a professor in a classroom with a good peer group around you, having those discussions and really being immersed in it. And we're not making any claims that we can do those things. On the other hand, as we talked about, the world has changed. And so there's a different way to do things. And so the education process that we go through is much more based on sort of the down and dirty, the getting your hands dirty, the practical, the immediate. And that's a different thing. Now, we need both of those things in the world, right? I graduated with high honors from my college. I can get into the academic side of that, and I can appreciate that. But at the same time, I can appreciate the fact of kind of getting into things and doing it immediately. So I think what has happened with COVID is it's sort of disrupted things. It's shaken those foundations. And when that happens, people sort of step back and they look around. They say, wait, there might be some different ways to do this. Now, interestingly enough, and I'm sure that my traditional higher education colleagues wouldn't be too excited about this at the moment, but I think this is ultimately good for both of us. I think it's fantastic that more people are looking at the kinds of options like we offer at Unbound, because I think that flexibility, the lack of having to accrue debt, the ability to do things fast and to iterate quickly, I think that's essential for a big chunk of the population to be prepared for work. At the same time, I don't think those people were actually benefiting the best from a traditional education anyhow, right? If you want to kind of get in and get going and get to work, 4 years of college tends to slow you down, tends to distract you, and sometimes tends to get you in trouble. It also means that you've got a lot of people in the classroom who aren't really there because they're sort of deep into academics. They're there because they think this is the only path to the middle class, right? And so as that kind of shifts a little bit, I think you're going to find people using options like Unbound that allow them to do things quicker, a little bit more flexibility and faster. And I think at the same time, that will kind of increase the quality of traditional higher education and let them to really focus in and do what they do really well. Now, the transition to get there is going to be painful for some folks, but ultimately, I think that's a good thing if we have more people who are really academically focused in traditional schools and people who are much more practically do this quickly focused, doing some other kinds of preparation for that.
So in a sense, everybody is sort of more pure in a sense in their niche. So
that's
therefore
correct.
they can, and I think even from an instructional standpoint, that might be simpler. I've told this story before. I had a student I tutored who was actually a similar age to one of my children. He just wasn't an academic kind of kid. Just didn't like it. It wasn't not questioning his intelligence. Just didn't want to sit in a classroom. Just didn't resonate with him. So he ended up going to the technical school in our area and learned welding, right?
Yes.
And then he somehow got into the military and he learned how to do underwater welding, which is like a niche within a niche, right?
And they pay like crazy.
Yeah. I mean, he's 20 years old. He was coming out of the Army or something. He's making like $75 an hour. He's still kind of hanging out with the same friends who were in college with no money. And not that, listen, it's not all about money.
Right.
It's about satisfaction, and there's other things, but you still got to pay rent. You still got to pay dues. So he came through, had a career, had a very marketable skill, had no debt, at least no academic debt, and was set up, in a high demand, high paying kind of situation. Hey, Steve Green here with Jonathan Brush. It's Education Live Thursday, your favorite time of the week, every Thursday night at 8. Jonathan's company, Be Unbound, has got a pretty neat service. Let me try to ask you something. I actually had a list of questions, but I've completely ignored them and gone off script for now.
That's almost always a real fun conversation.
It's fine. Let's see if we got any comment. Oh, look, we got a question from super fan Ron Shapiro. When do you think Unbound is more appropriate? A technical school such as New England is more appropriate versus a technical school, which is kind of what we just brought up. Ron is a brilliant out of mind reader.
Right. Yes. This is a great question. So first of all, it's worth noting that Unbound doesn't do technical training, right? So you can't come to Unbound and learn welding. I mean, frankly, I don't want you learning welding from a distance program anyhow, right? So that doesn't work as well. But I think that there's this important concept that I call hybridization. And it's not, I mean, lots of people talk about this, right? This is not something I invented, but it's when you take skills from different places and you cross them, right? And so I often tell folks this, look, if you want to just turn wrenches and work in auto repair, I actually think there's great, that we definitely need more qualified mechanics, right? And so there's a great track there. And I think the trades offer lots of opportunities that tend to get overlooked in today's world, right? Okay, so if you do that, the fastest way to get there is to go to a trade school, pick up those skills, and then get turning wrenches, right? But what if you have a slightly different focus? What if you want to turn wrenches and you like working with your hands, but you got some bigger kind of ambitions? You've got some leadership ambitions and stuff like that.
Or you want to own a repair shop.
Well, that's exactly where I was going with that. Is that you want to own it, or maybe you want to franchise it, or maybe you want to design an app that shows people how they can get their oil changes in their front yard, and you come around and do that, right? Those kinds of things. That's when this can be a really interesting cross, right? So in this case, I'd say, look, why don't you find the local shop and go put in 20 hours a week learning there? That's your hands-on experience. Then you have the flexibility to combine it with something like Unbound, where you're also picking up a business degree or perhaps a marketing degree. At the same time, you're meeting people from all over the country who are really highly motivated. You're going to these live events that we do. And when you get done with all that, you have the practical experience in the shop plus local connections, which can be really helpful as you're setting up business in your hometown or someplace else for that matter. You have marketing and business skills that have some academic rigor behind them through the online classes you've taken. You have a network of people that are giving you different perspectives from around the country and perhaps opening you up to new markets. And now you have a hybridized situation that gives you a lot of advantages. So in answer to your question, Mr. Shapiro, I think it's more appropriate when you're looking for sort of that, I don't want to just sit in college and then go sit in a cubicle after that. I don't necessarily want to just work as a technician my whole life. I want some sort of combination of that. And this is where that kind of option can give you the flexibility to do that. And then can give you a situation where you're out of college, you've got a degree, but you don't have any debt. So you have some flexibility financially to start something or to kick around some ideas.
See, a kind of a devil's advocate question would be, couldn't people do this anyway? Like, I mean, obviously you're providing a service, and I'm trying to help you promote that.
Oh,
but,
absolutely.
People could go, people could work during college. People could take a year off. I mean, gap years are super popular right now. But I think to some degree it's a mindset, right? There's sort of a freedom that it's saying to people, listen, it's okay to pursue other things. It's okay not to just go and study this in the quote unquote traditional way. Is there anything? And I know we're coming up against time. I hate to keep looking at my watch, but what kind of gets you up in the morning, John? What gets you excited? Is it helping the people? Is it seeing success stories? Is it just feeling like you're contributing to the world? Is it all the above? I mean, these are things that educators tend to feel, but you're in a sort of a unique situation even between that or among that. So is there something that just really gets you fired up for this? I mean, you took on a company, took on a big gig, trying to really promote this. So, what kind of gets your teapot cooking, so to speak?
I think anybody that sort of does something entrepreneurial and the risks that come with it, you have to have something that's almost ridiculous on your horizon line that kind of keeps you motivated. And so what keeps me motivated is and this, I'm not suggesting I'm going to do this all by myself. I'm not suggesting I'm the only person that can accomplish this. But I get up every morning thinking about how I can reinvent higher education. I worked in traditional higher education. I loved it, and I loved the school that I worked for. I had wonderful colleagues and had a great experience. But I also got to the point where I thought, this doesn't make sense for the people that I'm working with. All of the people. It does for some, but doesn't for and the people that did make sense for were starting to creep up in my mind. And I got to the point where I thought, I'm making a living asking people to make bad financial decisions, because I got a kid coming here who's trying to borrow $70,000 to get a music degree so they can teach music at high school. And that math is never going to turn out very good.
For $31,000 if they're
That's right. And it was, I didn't think that was the fault of the school. I didn't think that the system has kind of gotten top heavy that way. And there's a whole different conversation about how we got there. Mm-hmm. And then I started working and seeing these students. I said, there's people out there that, and I don't want to get too off track here, but I think the kind of sort of entrepreneurial, can-do, community-minded spirit that makes the U.S. special. And I'm not saying it doesn't exist other places. I'm just saying this is where I've lived, and I think there's something about that that's deep in our culture that was getting a little buried in this kind of one-track system. And so to be able to help those students and say, hey, I've got a way for you to remain engaged in your community. You don't have to pull up roots and leave, but to plug into a national network. I have a student body that's in all 50 states, right? And that they very much connect with each other, and they see each other at live events, all that stuff. So I'm going to give you the perspective that you would think about from college, from connecting to a wide group of people. I'm going to give you the ability to remain embedded in a community where you've invested some time already. And I'm going to give you the skills to be able to build a business, work in a business, create better than average value in that community. And here's the analogy I've used a lot, Steve. I tell people, look, everyone in the military has the same goal, right? They have the same mission. But a private first class is not as good as that mission as a Green Beret or an Army Ranger. And so I think, anybody graduates from high school, you've got the same mission, right? You want to make your way in the world. You want to be independent. You want to be able to make a difference, support your family and yourself, and do those things. I get up in the morning thinking that I want to create a program that makes my students like Army Rangers at real life. That they're just better at those skills. They're better at time management. They're better at task management. They're better at relational skills. They're better at creating value. They're better at communication. And that's this kind of program allows us the flexibility to do that. Is it for everybody? No. Is it for every student? No. But for the ones who are looking for that little bit of difference, who want those kinds of things that we can offer, I think it gives them a really amazing opportunity. And that's what gets me excited and gets me up in the morning.
If someone's interested in your program, is this the same timetable? Like they apply at kind of end of their senior year, or late, like early senior year, maybe December, sort of same timetable as a traditional school admissions process. I imagine your admissions process may be more personalized or something, but awesome. So basically, if somebody's got a junior in high school, or maybe even a senior, and they're thinking about this, beunbound.com. Or if they call, do you actually answer the phone?
Yeah, so it's beunbound.us. I do answer the phone sometimes, although
he's a hands-on owner here, right?
You can get transferred to me pretty easily. But yeah, go to beunbound.us. And look, what I was talking about all along in terms of the fact that, it's a great match for some folks and it's not for others.
Right.
If it's not a good match for you, I'm not at all interested in you joining. In fact, I'll spend 20 minutes, and I just did this earlier this week, I'll spend 45 minutes coaching you to the best place to go that's not us, right? If there's not a good match. But if it is a good match, then our job is to tell you exactly how it works, because it's different, and spend some time walking you through that. And then when you're done, you have the information. You can look back and say, yeah, this is a great option, in which case we'd be delighted to have you. And yes, our class is open now and starts in the fall. And if it's not a good option, you'll know a little bit more about the options that are out there, and we'll be delighted to share everything we know about putting you on the right path.
Jonathan Brush, I really appreciate you coming on Education Live Thursday, sharing some interesting stuff. Love to have you back. I think we got some unfinished business maybe, and some things that we just weren't able to get to. But anything you just want to leave with? Like anything you just want to make sure you say that we didn't address yet?
I think I would just end with telling people this. I think that despite all the gloom and doom we hear about certain things about education, this is an amazing time to be entering this time of life. If you're a high school student, college student, right? You've never had so many options. And in some ways that's a little bit overwhelming, but at the same time, you can go to school immediately. You can go to traditional residential school. You can do it online. You can take a pause and work and do something else and come back later. You could take 10 years off and come back and get your degree. That just wasn't possible when I went to school even 20 years ago, right?
Right.
And so I would end with this note of encouragement. There are all kinds of options out there. Yeah, it takes a little bit of digging around. But if you're thinking about doing something differently, this is a great time to do it. And if you're thinking of doing something traditionally, there's better options and more resources, more knowledge available than it's ever been before. And I think that's worth being excited about. And with all the gloom and doom, I would leave you on that high note and say there's some really cool opportunities, and there's a great time to be living to take advantage of them. So.
That's all I got to say. But it's really true. You know what you're saying is completely, it's observationally true and it's factually true. Is that the options that people have are there's 30, 40, there's just so many different things people can do, but at some point they got to take action.
Yes.
They got to get themselves going in the right direction. They got to take the first step, the second step. They got to align themselves into the right situations. So it isn't as simple as saying, well, gee, I got all these options. What a beautiful thing it is. You got to still take action. That's on the people too.
You got to do the work. Absolutely.
Yeah. Right. All right. I'm going to take a breath for a second. John, I know you got to go. Let's talk offline. We'll try to get you back soon and take it to the next step. And I'd love to hear more about what you're doing. Hey, I don't know if anybody noticed or cared, but I skipped all of our usual stuff in the beginning of the show today. Yeah, I know people are upset about it. I hear the crying all the way over here. But it was actually kind of a slow week in the education world. Not a whole lot of news, especially after the gang blockbuster stuff a few weeks ago with the SAT and the essay and the subject test, things like that. So I'm just going to keep it short today. I'm going to say, hey, listen, I appreciate everybody who's listening, appreciate everybody who shares this, everybody who's telling everything. Students, you coming into the second marking period or beginning of your second semester, stay focused, stay on time with things, and get that going. There are some new offerings happening at Make the Grade. Yeah, got some new things coming on. We're going to be starting to talk about next week. I think you're going to like them as parents. I think you'll really like them as students. It's all about making your lives easier and helping you to maximize your education. Anybody's interested in being a guest, not only on Education Live Thursday, but also on the podcast, reach out. And let's see if I have the email here. I think I do somewhere. And we'll go from there. But there's some neat stuff coming down the pike. I've got some things out there, even potentially for entrepreneurs, that's coming up. There's the email. Whoops, there it is. So we can go from there. Why is this not working? I don't know what's going on today. Nothing's working right today. Here we go. Okay. So that is it for today. I'm going to wrap it up. Let me just see if there's any more comments. Ronald Shapiro, thank you as always, keeping your streak alive. The #1 fan of Education Live Thursday. And Ron, it's about time I get you on here. Maybe reach out to me. Let's get you on the show and talk about the cool offerings that you have, which are pretty neat. All right, everybody, I will see you next week. And appreciate everybody. And let me get the theme song coming out. I got to go outside and shovel some more snow. I don't know what everybody else is doing, but we still got a ton of snow here, and I can't even get I can't take my trash out. Tonight's trash night. I can't take it out because they're buried in the snow. So anybody wants to come over and help? Appreciate it. Although I understand why you wouldn't want to. Thanks again, and we'll see you next week.
You've been listening to Make the Grade with the Success Doctor, Stephen Green. If you enjoyed this episode, be sure to subscribe. For more resources and support, please visit makethegrade.net.